Everyone. Just getting started here. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our last day of the Gale Conference. My name is Harley Rogers, and I am going to be the moderator for today's session, Meet Cute, a love story of the ACRL framework and AI literacy. Before we begin, we have a couple of reminders for everyone. We do have a code of conduct that we will adhere to for this conference. I'm going to post that link in the chat now. If you experience any issues related to the conduct, you can email us at galeconferencesupport@googlegroups.com. And I'm also going to post into the chat how you can adjust your controls as a participant and how you can see the resources in a live Zoom session. So that is going out now. Also, please be sure that your microphone is muted during the question and answer portion. You may be invited to unmute, or you can post your questions in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will get to those. Just a reminder, this session is being recorded and being live streamed, and you are also able to turn on show captions by clicking on the show captions button at the bottom of your screen. All right, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Lori Borchard, who is the Instruction and Engagement Librarian at Cal Poly Maritime Academy. She has worked in both academic and public libraries for 15 years. Her research has focused on information literacy, educational technology, and library outreach. Amber Jansen is a STEM librarian at Cal Poly Maritime Academy. Her research has focused on information literacy for undergraduate engineering students, information behaviors of engineers, and most recently on AI literacy for undergraduate students. So thank you both for joining us today. I will pass it on to you.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. So
welcome to our presentation. It's titled Meet Cute, a love story of the ACRL framework and AI literacy. My name is Amber Jansen. I'm here with my co-presenter, Lori Borchard. We're both librarians at the Cal Poly Maritime Academy, as Harley mentioned. I want to share some context for the work we're going to share with you today. So this workshop is informed by a project that was funded by the California Learning Lab, and we want to acknowledge the support that they've provided for our work and that of many of our colleagues throughout public higher education in California. So we're librarians at a maritime academy in California, which is pretty small, but our campus is situated within the larger California State University system. And so our campus, being so small, has given very little direction to students and faculty about use of generative AI, which motivated us as librarians to think about how we could support AI literacy for our students and for our faculty. And in fact, even after we started our project, our California State University system sort of suddenly released a site license for ChatGPT to all students mid-semester in March 2025, with, as you guessed it, very little guidance for how to use that. And so that even more demonstrated the need for what we are doing to help students understand when it was appropriate, when to use generative AI responsibly, how to use it effectively if they choose to. Because as we'll talk about, we encounter some students who choose not to, and that's okay. but we want to make sure that those who do choose to understand what they're doing. So we started by looking at AI literacy competencies and trying to figure out where they might overlap with instruction we are already doing. And beginning in the fall of 2024, we actually partnered with a mechanical engineering professor to start implementing some AI competencies in courses that used quantitative experimentation, such as physics labs and engineering labs. So as librarians, we primarily focused on literature review and background research parts of the assignments, which we'll share with you today. But our ultimate goal for this project was to, and still is, to develop some OER lesson plans that we can share with both professors and librarians so that they can use AI literacy in any discipline they're working with. So stay tuned for that later this year. But what we're going to do today is we're actually going to share with you our approach to matching those AI literacy competencies to the information literacy learning outcomes that we already had existing in library instruction, which I'm sure you already have. So we'll go over some AI literacy competencies. And of course, we want to acknowledge that there isn't really a standardized framework or definition of AI literacy. It's still evolving. We know that AI competencies aren't new. But with the recent proliferation of generative AI, it's time to re-examine those competencies and adapt them for a broader range of disciplines and end users. So you might be encountering other competencies, other frameworks, and we're hoping that the method we share today, you can adapt to whatever competencies or frameworks you choose to use in the future or that your institution uses. So the second thing we'll do today is we'll take some time to sort of map and try to match those competencies and the ACRL framework just to demonstrate how you might do that. And then finally, we'll share an example lesson plan that we worked with to show how you could implement those AI literacy competencies.
Okay, so as Amber mentioned, we were working with mechanical engineering and we were also focusing on information literacy. When we started our research I think we started in 2024, we really wanted to scan the literature to see what was out there in terms of what others had done. At that time, there was not a lot of kind of peer-reviewed or scholarly resources or even anything from ACRL at the time for information literacy. And if anyone has looked at this research, it is extremely overwhelming. There is a lot of stuff out there, and through our research, obviously we discovered that AI is not something new, even though Gen AI is fairly recent. But AI in general and AI literacy was not something that was particularly new. With Gen AI, it was just a different context. So we actually discovered a seminal paper written by Long and Majerko from 2020, and it outlined 17 competencies. Now, this is coming from computer science, and a lot of the frameworks and competencies that came after that often cite this paper. So this is kind of the original research. You may be wondering why computer science for us as librarians, but like I said, we were working with mechanical engineering. But even after, now ACRL has their competencies. I know Leo Low is really popular right now, so there is a lot more research out there for us as librarians. But we keep coming back to this, and I'm going to go over all of these. We actually chose 9 that were most relevant to us. But we like this because it's computer science, it really focuses on the technology behind AI. It also focuses on the role that users play and kind of emphasize that as well. And kind of really focusing on the human judgment and interpretation that is needed to understand AI and also use AI. So I'm going to go through all of these to kind of just describe them and explain them a little bit more. So like I said, 9 out of 17. So we have 4 categories here. We have know and understand AI, use and apply AI, evaluate AI, and AI ethics. So for know and understand AI, recognize AI. So being able to tell the difference between technologies that use AI and those that do not. I think this is something that is increasingly more important for students, especially because there's lots of tools, including library tools, that have AI in the background, and sometimes it is hard to tell. I'm always surprised sometimes that students don't recognize things in terms of like the Google AI overview and other resources. Um, Especially now with Gen AI, I think there's a lot of focus on that, but AI means lots of different things and has been around for a long time. So and then understand intelligence. So compare human, animal, and machine intelligence and explain what makes something intelligent. So once again, this kind of goes back to having them understand what is happening behind the scenes and how the tool works and what makes it intelligent. So for use and apply AI, this really focuses on data. So we have data literacy. So understand basic concepts about collecting, using, and interpreting data. So just thinking of there's a lot of data that goes into the tools. We're also kind of thinking of when they're getting their results, that is also data. I mean, it's information, it's words, and it's putting together things. It's not the same as some of the other traditional research tools we use. And then learning from data. So recognize that AI is learning from data, including data that people generate. So it is, um, it is an intelligent tool, but it is also, there's also people behind that. It is a technology, but getting them to understand what's happening behind the scenes. And then machine learning steps, understanding the basic steps of machine learning and the challenges involved in each stage. I will say this was something that we recognized as something we wanted to include in our project, but this one was a little bit more difficult for us to implement in some of our contexts, but we thought it was still relevant to put it in our presentation and talk about it. And then we have evaluate AI, so critically interpreting data, understand that data can't be taken at face value and requires interpretation. So we're thinking of this in terms of when they're getting their results from Gen AI, understanding that it does, emphasizing it's not just copy and paste, it takes them, they need to evaluate it, interpret it, understand what's going on. Strengths and weaknesses. So identify what AI does well, where it struggles, and when human judgment is a better choice. Obviously, really important. Getting them to understand when it's okay, what it's good for, and what it's not. And then lastly, AI ethics. So identify key ethical issues, including privacy, bias, misinformation, transparency, accountability, diversity, and decision making. This is just an example of a few of these. Obviously, we're not going to go through all of these in one session, but understanding some of the basic ethics behind it. And then human role in AI. So explaining how people design, train, select, and improve AI systems. And then,
Okay, so we created a worksheet for you, so you could follow along today with some of the things we're going to do. And then this worksheet will be available for you to use in the future. So there's a QR code on the screen. We've also, I think we're going to put a link in the chat, and it's in the resources tab. So we've put all the places we can think of. So if you don't mind, go ahead and taking a moment to open up that worksheet. While we're getting everyone up with the worksheet, I'm also going to launch a poll to start helping us start thinking about the overlap between AI literacy and information literacy. So take a few moments, take a look at the worksheet, answer our poll questions, and then we'll go through the poll results in just a few minutes.
so I put the link in the chat. And, obviously no rush. It's kind of a lot to consume, so we want you to take your time. I'm also going to move the presentation back to the competencies, but you'll also see the list of the competencies with the brief definitions are also in the worksheet.
Okay, we'll take another minute or so for the poll and then we'll take a look and see what everyone's thinking.
Yeah, we totally understand it can be challenging. So we appreciate even if it just gets you thinking.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll, so click on any last things. Okay. So I will say this was super interesting because yeah, as you said, it's not easy. there isn't like a one-to-one on a lot of these things. There's definitely a lot of overlap, which is why I gave the option to choose multiple competencies, obviously, for each frame. But looking at the first one of authority is constructed and contextual, it looks like three really stood out to you all: the critically interpreting data, the human role in AI, and the understanding intelligence. I think this might actually be similar. Let's see what else. So information creation as a process, it looks like a lot of you, 69%, said human role in AI. I definitely agree with this, right? For students, even researchers, to recognize what content is being created, how it's being created, how AI plays a role in that or doesn't play in a role in that is sort of tricky to navigate right now. I don't know if it will ever become more clear, but it is tricky. Let's see, information has value. Wow, overwhelmingly 73% of you tagged data literacy, which has been a core component of information literacy, even though it's listed as a separate literacy. We've been focusing on that a lot for a long time as librarians, so that makes sense, where that could be a good place to sort of think about how you might integrate that into lesson plans you're already doing that use data literacy, and how to just talk about it in an AI context or generative AI context. Research as inquiry, that one was a little bit more spread out, it looks like, but human role in AI and learning from data were big ones. Scholarship is conversation, also high for human role in AI. I think that should probably be for all of them, right? And then finally, searching as strategic exploration. Oh, that one was definitely more even. There's a lot more covering that. I do want to point out that ethics showed up on every single one of these, but not as like the highest one. And that's something we experienced as well when we were mapping, is like ethics is just always sort of there. And it's hard to think explicitly about the ethics, but it's sort of, it's not really its own competency sometimes. It's sort of tacked on to all of the other competencies. And so I think that was really interesting. So yeah, so if you have the worksheet up, you could start to think about which one of these fit, which ones you want to think about in the future. And I will see if we can share these results out later, because that could be interesting.
Does anyone have any questions at this time? The next step is I'm actually going to show the worksheet and how I filled it out. And so I'll go through that, but I just kind of wanted to stop midway just to see if anyone had any questions. You can use the chat is fine to use that. Okay, if not, I will move forward. And so, like I said, I am going to open up a worksheet just to kind of show you how I filled it out. Okay, so can everyone see this Meet Cute worksheet? And thank you, Amber, for creating this. We made it look really cute. We really went in on the theme. So there is no wrong answer, obviously. I think as we saw with the poll results, you could fit any one of those competencies, I think, into any one of these frames. It's really kind of how you think about it. And so we developed this worksheet for you to basically start with a basic instructional design process. Sure, yes, I can make it bigger. Hopefully that's a little bit better. Thank you. So I decided to focus on searching as strategic exploration because I do that a lot. And for this project that we worked on, we focused on having students use AI to search for things, and we were focusing on students working on a literature review. So for this one, I chose, excuse me, 3 frames. We have know and understand, use and apply, and evaluate AI. And then the competencies that I chose were understand intelligence, learning from data, and strengths and weaknesses. And when I first filled this out, I had a lot of more of these. It was really easy to kind of add a bunch because they do overlap a lot. So my goal for this instruction and kind of rethinking what I do is to introduce students to using Gen AI as a search tool. Now, I know it's not a search tool. I know it's not a database. It is not Google, but I know that that is how students are using it. And so I wanted to experiment with providing a basic understanding of how it works, how to effectively prompt, and how to evaluate it. Scroll down. So getting to know each other, explore your existing instruction. I chose finding and evaluating scholarly sources, excuse me, for a literature review. Something that I have done several times. Both Amber and I have done working with 4th-year undergraduate students. One class is for an engineering process design, and then also a global studies senior thesis where they're writing a 35-page paper. So these are 2 different courses. The engineering course, I would say they're not necessarily working on something where they're creating a traditional peer-reviewed literature review. They're working on designing a product, an engineering project. And so they need to find information sources, but it's not necessarily scholarly. And then, so usually what I do, students will search, I usually have them search library databases, maybe Google Scholar to locate high quality information sources. Oftentimes I'm doing this in a course integrated context, anywhere between 50 and a 75-minute session. My current learning outcomes, understand how content is organized slash indexed. This is usually focused more on the library databases. Develop an effective search strategy, including brainstorming keywords, and as well as Boolean and facet operators. Also locating the full text of relevant sources. And if I'm lucky, I might have time for them to evaluate sources. These are like pie in the sky, evaluate sources for accuracy and relevancy. I think this is, I chose this one because I think it's very common for librarians to get asked to do this one. So oftentimes I'll have them maybe work through a worksheet where I'm having them, fill something out step by step. So having them, brainstorm the keywords, develop some type of search strategy. So having them, and then I might demonstrate how to search a database. I have them students search themselves, maybe identify at least 1 or 2 that they can use for their research. And like I said, if I have time, have them take a look at it and evaluate it. Usually, once also I realized we're lucky. We are at a very small institution. Our classes are rarely over 25 students. So if I have enough time, I usually try to go in around the room to check on each student, chat with them about their research topic, answer any questions they have. So for my assessment, I'm like anecdotally looking around to see, are they on task? Are they looking for something? Are they following the directions? I might have them hand in the workshop at the end of the class to take a look at it. Sometimes if I'm embedded in a class, I might have the ability to actually take a look at their assignment at the end, but I know that a lot of us don't have that opportunity. So finding the connection, the next part of the worksheet, we have, I have the existing learning outcome. I have the AI literacy frame and competency that I identified, as well as the comments on the alignment, extension, or new. and then I have a revised outcome. So we have 3 outcomes here: develop an effective search strategy. So I have understanding intelligence, learning from data. That kind of aligns with the search strategies, thinking of the traditional library instruction, so aligning with having them search for something, getting a brief understanding of how those tools work. So for this revised outcome, I have understand how GAI works. I might show them a short video, just kind of emphasizing or describing how it is not the same as Google. It's not a repository of things, nothing lives in there. Getting them to understand that it's analyzing text and analyzing data. And then I might give them I'll give them a brief overview on the prompt engineering, the importance of prompt engineering. So developing a detailed prompt to get relevant results. I have to say this is actually easier to do than describing how a database works, and it's a little bit more interesting to them as well. And then the other outcome, the second one I have, locate relevant high quality information sources. So we have that strengths and weaknesses of AI. So they're evaluating the relevancy of the results, also evaluating the tool. The revised outcome I have: evaluate search results for relevancy, update prompt if necessary, and locate the original text. So they're going to have to actually go outside of the tool. And they often, even without me prompting, I've found that they do go to a library or they'll go to Google Scholar for that. And then lastly, we have evaluate sources for accuracy, also strengths and weaknesses, getting them to understand you can't take the results at face value. They need contextual human reasoning. You need to go outside of GAI and apply critical thinking skills. Investigate the authority of the sources, compare GAI summary with the source. So if it gave you a summary of what the source was about, did that actually match? It's also a great place for them to identify any citations, or like ghost citations, or I mean, hopefully they've included something. We encourage them in the prompt engineering part of the class to actually like ask it for something specific, including links. So we did have some students who specifically asked for links. All right, and then actually the activity that we had was we had students work in pairs with one student prompting while the other one takes notes. We provide a brief overview of prompt engineering. We do a collective brainstorm of what's important to include in the prompt. The student searches for a specific type of source related to their class. So we thought about as a group what kinds of sources would be relevant for them. So obviously in the global studies class, we're looking at peer-reviewed publication, whereas engineering a little bit less so. But getting them to focus on a particular topic within their research, or topic and source. Find the full text of the source outside of the tool, and then evaluate the source for accuracy, relevancy. Like I said, compare with the description. And then lastly, review and evaluate the results as well as the tool by answering a series of questions. So we asked for them to answer these reflection questions. So you can see this is just what we had them do, ask the direction. So asking it for sources, what kinds of sources did it give you? Did they update their prompt? Were they able to locate the source outside? Did it match the description? Were links provided? Where did you find it? Evaluating the source. So was it relevant to your prompt? Is it appropriate for your, for this one, I have lab report or your assignment? Asking them, is something missing? And then also comparing this to other research tools that they're familiar with. Can they identify any similarities or differences? And then when it comes to assessment for this, we just walking around was fascinating, listening to their conversations as they're talking about it. We requested a copy of their chat conversation, And then also the answers to the reflection questions. So did they follow the directions? Did they develop a detailed prompt? Did they update their prompt? Can we tell that they actually did go out and look for something, or were they giving us kind of more general answers? And within the presentation, I also just provided the slides. I provided a brief overview of the lesson plan. Other than that, I will switch it over to Amber to talk about some of the lessons that we learned.
So I will say my biggest takeaway from doing this, besides just realizing that there are so many different AI competencies and that you really, after a short bit of exploration, have to kind of pick some and go with it because you could spend a lot of time trying to figure out which are the best ones. And really, we just need to move forward sometimes. But I always have the instinct, I think Lori did too, of like, they're all important. We have to include them all. And it's really not a sustainable approach to modifying your lesson plans. And so my biggest recommendation is like pick one, try it out, see how it goes. If it goes great, add another. But don't feel like you have to do everything at once. I know generative AI is moving at a fast pace and the conversation around it is moving fast. I mean, it only started a few years ago and here we are. But for your own instruction, for your own work with students and faculty, just pick one and start there and take it slow, take it easy, see how it goes. That would be my biggest takeaway. What about you, Lori?
I think just approaching it as you're exploring with them and kind of being a neutral guide. I think the minute that you're like AI sucks and it's terrible and you shouldn't use it, you completely lose them. Also, lots of students don't like it, which I think we discovered too. But I think just kind of for me, um, I was feeling very anxious and nervous about AI. I think a lot of us have been. I think this approach has really helped me kind of ease my anxiety about things. And I understand that even if my session isn't totally around using it, I still talk about it and mention it. Even if the majority of my instruction is focusing on library resources, I'm still going to mention it, still going to talk about it. And I think collaborating with faculty members and going through this process of actually taking a look at the literature has been helpful as well. And I do want to recognize someone in the chat wanted to see the completed worksheet, which we can add that to the resources in the Zoom session. That makes sense. I'll see if I can add a chat to that, or I'll see if I can quickly do that in the next 7 minutes. I want to leave time for questions, but otherwise I'll definitely leave that there. And then I think
Yeah.
we'll open it up for questions.
Okay. Yeah. And while we're looking at the questions, I just want to say, we did encounter a lot of students who are like, I don't want to use AI. I don't want to do it. And that's totally fine. We just, knowing how AI is being snuck into a lot of things, when we talk to students, we really want to frame it as, we just want you to know what it is when you encounter it. We're not saying you have to use it, but we're saying that we need to talk about it to know that it's out there in the world and what you should do if it does come up. And so I think that has been a good approach with students, is not saying like, here's the thing you have to learn how to do, but just like, hey, I want you to know what it is when you come across it so that you're prepared and you don't feel out of your depth trying to figure out what's going on.
And then just want to mention too, we do have some further reading. We have the Long and McGarrico original article. We have some other ones. The ACRL one, we have a paper that we did for ACEE a few years ago where we shows our process for developing our frames and then we have the low and see the EDUCAUSE also has some great resources there. And then I'll see if I can add a link to that worksheet. Open for questions.
So I see Sarah's comment about once you're out in the work world and employers maybe not being so nice about using things or not using things. And that's totally true. And that's one of the things, when we tell students, like, you have a choice right now, you may not have a choice in the future. And so we want you to understand how AI and generative AI work, just so that if you are in that situation, you're prepared. Yeah, definitely. And they're getting a lot of confusing messages from different places, right? Some instructors are saying never use it. Some instructors are saying use it for everything. And it depends on what university you're at, what some of that messaging looks like too. So, yeah, we're just trying to cover some basic foundations for students who are trying to exist in this new world. Okay, so Lori, we have a question. How does your faculty respond to your instruction of AI from the library world? I will say, as Lori's thinking about this, it's different. It depends on the faculty, right? We have some who are like, I had this really sweet mechanical engineering professor who was like, I know nothing about this. This is not my expertise. I'm so happy you're here to help, start this conversation with my students and myself. And towards the end, he was like, okay, I could do this myself now. Now that you've come in and started this conversation, I feel comfortable doing this. So I think that was a really interesting experience. We've had other instructors who are just like, no, not in my class. And that's fine too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say the times I've done it where the faculty member has been like, "Oh, I learned something." And every time I've done it, because I've also done it where I've had them look at a library database as well as ChatGPT, and they compare it, and they always come up with like the citations are weird. So there's usually always a little bit of something there that's like useful for them, as well as something that they kind of realize, oh, that didn't do a good job. But I would say I do try to ask the faculty member in advance. And like I said, even if I'm focusing solely on library resources, I'm still going to mention it. I might just say, I know some of you may be using ChatGPT. Want you to really be careful. It's not Google. It's not a database. The sources don't live in there. You're going to have to eventually come out and get to, you're going to have to go to a library database or Google Scholar to find the actual source as well.
Oh, good question, Betty, about offering AI instruction as an option in your library services. We have a unique position. It's a very small campus of we don't really use a forum so much as we talk to faculty directly and communicate with them. So it's really easy to talk about what do you want in your session, and then if they seem like they're amenable to be like, hey, I'm adding some AI competencies in with my instruction. Is that okay with you? This is what I'm doing. Um, And then, of course, there is a fabulous question about syllabi. We're still waiting for a standard statement for our syllabi on our campus. It's been pretty much up to the instructor's discretion. And so that's really a good conversation with students, is to think about the context of when they're using generative AI and if it's okay in that context or not, because it very clearly is in some cases and it very clearly is not in other cases. And then there's all that gray area of needing to check with certain professors or instructors to see if that's the right approach.
And I know someone had asked about the further reading links. I'm not able to add them into the chat at the moment, but our presentation slides should be available in the conference website or for our session. And so they'll be in there. And I did share the sample worksheet, which I will add later as well. There, but I added that in the chat. But I know we're running out of time.
Yes, we are right at time now. But thank you both so much. That was really interesting to listen to. And if anyone has any questions, I'll volunteer that they can reach out directly to you. Sound good?